Okay, so you've conquered all your enemies. You control the Mediterranean. Now what happens? Well, lots of new problems. There is a pretty unequal distribution of land that is acquired by conquest. Largely, people who are able to buy up that land are aristocrats who live in big cities like Rome, and they set up what are called latifundia, which are basically Roman plantations worked by slaves that have been bought from conquered peoples. And if there are regular, see Wallace yawning back there, if there are regular famines, as we know there always are, and if there's economic trouble like farmers today face, that means that occasionally people aren't doing so well and they've got to sell the family farm. And who's going to buy it? And normally at a rock bottom price, the people who can afford to do so. So during this period of by the middle of the 2nd century BC, the 100s, lots of those small-scale Roman farms that we talked about being the heart of Rome and the most noble occupation, they're gone. And instead, latifundia are popping up where a small group of individuals are growing wealthier and wealthier, and smaller people are being kicked off of the farms. This leads to a wealthy class of individuals who don't have necessarily senatorial power and who want to expand their own voice in politics. It also leads to, well, where do those farmers go? They go to the city. And they go in such huge numbers that they can't find work. But at the same time, Rome is so successful and they're able to develop so much power through the slave labor force that they're actually able to appease those folks. And what we see developing, and I want you to watch the link here, that's a little bit off, but I think it's also kind of fun, about bread and circuses and how this is an attempt by the Roman state that can afford to do it to supplement people with entertainment and with food. And the notion is that if you can keep the people fed and can keep the people happy, they aren't going to rebel against you and you can keep consolidating power in your own hands. At the same time, there's a series of wars that pop up. One is in North Africa with a guy who had been a general in the Roman army and then goes back home and rebels against the Romans. I've got his name in the opening slides, but his name is Jugurtha. And Jugurtha, basically, much like Philip had done with the Greeks, learns how the Romans fight, and then because the Romans are slacking, takes the fight to them and actually is able to break away in northern Africa and found his own kingdom. So this kind of shows how poor discipline, lack of endurance in the military, high-level corruption, overreaching ambition of government officials is all hurting Rome. The types of things that Cato himself was talking about. This eventually leads to lots of civil strife and wars that we're going to see in the next lecture, a period of time called the Rise of Generals with Marius and Sulla, and all sorts of different problems for what had been a city now being the larger Mediterranean world. And I mentioned bread and circuses on this slide. Sorry, I'm just looking at my slides. It's actually the next one. So this video will cover both this slide and the next slide. So I have here an example of what the latifundia themselves look like. The next slide is the way of kind of popularly entertaining people. So again, these problems create an attempt by some individuals to consolidate their power and a viewpoint by some others that this is what's weakening Rome and we got to go back to what made us great in the first place.